Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with another classic pay-per-view review as nominated by my Patreon backers. This week's is a doozy, folks, and it is also one of my most requested pay-per-views I've had since I started doing this Patreon perk several months ago. It's WCW Uncensored 1996 from March 24th at the Tupelo Coliseum in Tupelo, Mississippi. This is nominated by Kevin Borneval, Brian Evanson, and Peter Myshak. Guys, thank you so much for nominating this show. Like I said, this is a very memorable show for all the wrong reasons. Some good, though, as well. There are some diamonds in the rough with this show, and I'll get to that in a little bit. The commentary team for this show is Tony Schiavone, Dusty Rhodes, and Bobby Heenan. This, and like I said, some diamonds in the rough here. And the commentary in this show is honestly one of the highlights for me, this whole show, because just listening to it, just listening to the interactions between Dusty and Bobby Heenan, I'll bring up some examples later on in this review, but it is a ball to listen to those three guys just kind of riffing on each other the entire time. It's like the banter you hear between Michael Cole and Jonathan Coachman and Corey Graves today, but funnier and like feels more organic, and it works so well. About 9,000 fans packed the Tupelo Coliseum for this show. The buy rate for this event was 250,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. If you compare it to what the World Wrestling Federation put out the same month, WrestleMania, then it's obviously a huge disparity, but that's not fair to compare Uncensored to WrestleMania. Anyway, the opening package, which highlights the Doomsday Cage stuff with sound bites from guys like Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart, is really just epic.
It's Doomsday!
Also, the Doomsday Cage, aka the Tower of Doom, the subject of this evening's main event, is also doubling as the entranceway, which I think is pretty unique, and it's obviously not a great setup for the fans when looking at the match, but I do appreciate the double use of the setup and the prop around which the main event revolves. Opening match for the US Championship as Konnan defends against Eddie Guerrero. Now, if you're like me and you didn't start watching wrestling to the late 90s, Monday Night War period, so you're familiar with Konnan's look from then, pretty much the present day, it is a bit of a shock to see Konnan here in traditional tights and boots and no shirt and doing these high-flying lucha moves. Of course, Konnan he was still very athletic later on in his years, but there was a dramatic shift between, this version of Konnan and baggy pants, tank top Konnan that we saw from the late 90s onward. The more I started watching wrestling, I would go back and watch his stuff in Mexico, so I'm familiar with that look and that style of Konnan. This match in particular was great. One of the best of the night. These two, Konnan and Eddie, just go all around the ring with a bunch of really cool offense that wasn't really prevalent in the US at this time. A lot of cool lucha moves and counters upon counters, basically, is the best way I could describe a lot of the stuff they did in this matchup. The announcers are putting it over in a big way too, which is great. You can talk trash about WCW all you want, but one thing they had going for them around this time was their bringing in the luchadors and them doing this innovative stuff, like I said, you just didn't see in the US on this level at this time period. It's a very divided crowd here. Both guys are baby faces. Both guys are doing great stuff in the ring. You can even hear the fans kind of changing their chant, mid-chant almost, from Eddie to Konnan, which is pretty cool to hear. At one point, Eddie he gets dumped onto the outside. Konnan goes for a suicide dive. It doesn't look great, but it's effective. Maybe it's a bad angle. Other angles might make it look better. Near the end of the match, Eddie goes for a leapfrog, but Konnan's head collides with Eddie's groin. It's kind of shown as incidental contact, even though it's technically a low blow. Konnan covers Eddie and retains the title. So kind of an anticlimactic finish when you consider the offense they had going for them in this matchup. It doesn't end in a big, dramatic, flashy move. It ends with, something that in kayfabe sense was an accident, and then Konnan just covers him and wins. And so he retains the championship against Eddie Guerrero. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars. High quality match to kick off this show. I gotta love cruiserweight openers. With the exception of Great American Bash 91, all of the WCW shows I've been reviewing for this segment have been some variation of cruiserweights. I've had cruiserweights involved somewhere, and it's never disappointed me. Backstage, the Giant is online talking with fans via CompuServe, and just this shot of the Giant looking at his laptop is just one of the funniest things for me. I have to be honest, when I first looked at the rundown for this show, when I decided I was going to do this one for my channel, and I saw the second match was Lord Steven Regal versus the Belfast Bruiser, aka Fit Finlay, I was so pumped. I'm like, yes, I love these two guys, I love their body of work, and these two together just makes for a tremendous combustible element. First of all, can we talk about Finlay's gimmick here? He would not be known as Fit Finlay in WCW for a few months at this point. He would make the name change later, but here he's the Belfast Bruiser. Look at that jacket. It's part leather jacket, part road Warrior shoulder pads. Look at that mullet. I don't know what part each part would be, but it's a spectacular mullet there, and the mustache. It just is a tremendous look. It starts off with a brawl right away. Great aggression by Finlay. Great selling by Regal. Every move that he takes from Finlay is like he's getting shot by a gun. Just the way he's like, ooh, it's great selling by Regal. Anyone who wants to like become a better wrestler should really study Steven Regal. Just on his selling alone is amazing. There's a great cutoff here by Regal. Finlay goes for a corner dodge. He turns around and immediately eats a dropkick from Regal. I haven't seen Regal throw too many dropkicks before, so to see him do that in this match was pretty cool. They go to the outside. Finlay goes for a chair from the front row, but they're all connected, so he can't get one, so he looks kind of awkward there. They're fighting on the apron. Regal is on the outside part of the apron, and he suplexes Finlay to the outside. Now, I've seen that move happen a bunch in video games, but I can't remember a time I've actually seen it happen in real life. I've always seen people try and tease, like, oh, I'm going to suplex him on the outside, but it never happens. Like, that is the first time I've ever seen it happen, and that was just like, oh my god, it's amazing. And Finlay lands on his feet, so that's kind of a safe bump in that respect, but like, wow, like, so cool they would actually go there. Big low blow by Regal later on. Dusty tries to say gluteus maximus a number of times, and it's always hilarious.
I mean, he's got him now after that boot to the luteum maximum. If I got kicked in the luteum maximus right now, sooner or later I'm going to get up and go get whoever kicked me in the luteum maximum.
Finlay has given Regal some stiff shots in this matchup. At one point, like, Regal's got Finlay on the ropes, and Finlay just like decks him right in the face with the left hook. And then they're fighting on the outside. Regal gets hit with a right hook, and it breaks his nose. He just busted open immediately. Oh my god, this fight! Talk about fight forever. I want to see these guys just brawl and keep doing what they're doing. This match was like had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Unfortunately, the Blue Bloods interfere. Dave Taylor and Earl Robert Eaton, which is just Bobby Eaton, who was repackaged as a Blue Blood. They run down and they beat up Finlay. The match ends in disqualification, which is a bit disappointing. It is the only match on the card with a DQ finish at Uncensored, which is this pay-per-view, which is kind of theoretically supposed to be an anything goes kind of match. And that is important for something that happens later in this show. Be that as it may, I give this match 3 stars. What a fight by these two. They just beat the piss out of each other. You believe every bit of it. It's so much fun to watch. I might even put it to 3.5 stars if it weren't for the DQ finish, but that is just a small kind of thing in the grand scheme of things. I mean, if there's one match you watch on Uncensored 96 for good reasons, it's this one. We get to see more of the Giant backstage. He cuts a promo against Lochness, his opponent for the evening, and he busts out a rhyme.
I could start off with rhymes. I could start off with riddles. Lochness in the ring, I'm gonna smoke you like bacon on the griddle.
Up next, it's man versus woman as Colonel Robert Parker, who later be known as Tennessee Lee, takes on Madusa, the former Alundra Blaze. Madusa is no doubt still patiently waiting for WCW to build that women's division she was promised. Earlier, Madusa spoiled Parker's wedding to Sherry Martel at Clash of Champions, but instead of having Madusa and Sherry fight on pay-per-view, because they already fought on TV, that match is over and done with. So let's have a man versus woman match here with goofy Colonel Robert Parker here fighting Madusa. Parker, of course, is, he's not a fish out of water. He wrestled in the 70s and 80s before becoming a manager, so it's not like he's completely unknown to this. The high point of this match is right in the beginning when Dusty freaks the hell out when Parker can lock up.
Oh, he locked up with her. He locked up with her. What the hell? He locked up with her and broke clean.
This is basically a comedy match. Parker gets Madusa up in the air with an airplane spin, but he gets dizzy. Madusa counters with a sunset flip, then slams Parker to the mat. Dick Slater, who is Parker's charge here to help train him for the match, comes out to help out Parker. Madusa hits the bridging German suplex, but Slater grabs Madusa's leg, and Parker rolls on top of Madusa, basically with his crotch right in her face to win the match. So the dirty, devious heel Robert Parker shows his manly supremacy and beats Madusa in this match here. I'm going to give it 1 star out of 4. There's some funny moments here and there. It's an actual match, even though it's pretty short, but at least it looked okay and it made me laugh. And again, Dusty's commentary is just tremendous in this. Lee Marshall is backstage with the Road Warriors as they cut a promo on Sting and Booker T for their match later on, but I'm far more curious about the chalkboard in the background. It looks to be some kind of like drawing of the Doomsday cage with some kind of playbook, some kind of like plays happening. You see like circles and shapes and letters indicating who's who and like the path they want to go down. Like, what could the strategy possibly be for him? I want to see that whole chalkboard. Up next, Diamond Dallas Page takes on the Booty Man, better known as Brutus Beefcake. If you can believe it, this is probably one of Ed Leslie's more embarrassing gimmicks. Of all the matches from this evening, I was really confused the most by this one as far as the backstory, because it's really hard to find like succinct information online. The commentary was not helpful at all. I tried to piece some things together based on what I could figure out. Basically, DDP is down on his luck. He's broke. Apparently, the fortune he made in the previous year, like he said it was from arm wrestling, turns out it was a lotto ticket that he actually like bought for Kimberly, the Diamond Doll. So she winds up leaving DDP because he's a scumbag. So now DDP is just down on his luck. He's broke. He's destitute. He had to pawn off all of his robes and diamonds. He looks very grisly here. The beard is extra thick and his hair is all frazzled and stuff. And his tights look ill-fitting. It's just a very like hobo-ish look for Diamond Dallas Page here. Meanwhile, Page was supposed to be facing Johnny B. Bad for the TV title on this show, but Bad was leaving the company. So then instead, on an episode Saturday night, Page cost Bad the championship against Lex Luger. So now Lex is a double champion, TV champion and tag champion with Sting. So then Johnny B. Bad quits the company, goes to World Wrestling Federation as Mark Merrow with his wife Sable, and the rest of that is history. So now Page needs an opponent. And also at this point, the Diamond Doll had left DDP to be with Johnny B. Bad. So now Bad is gone. Where's Kimberly fit in all this? Now she's aligned herself with the Booty Man. And again, Booty Man, terrible gimmick. It's like, think of like the most PG, shitty version of like Billy Gunn's Mr. Ass gimmick, and then put through the WCW filter and like a few years before things got edgy. And that's what the Booty Man essentially was. He's big into butts, and that's all it pretty much was about the Booty Man gimmick. Also, another reason that Ed Leslie is the Booty Man here is because he was the Zodiac with the Dungeon of Doom, but then it was revealed he was actually still working for Hulk Hogan the whole time. He was kind of like a double agent for Hulkamania and kind of fed Hogan all the secrets of the Dungeon of Doom. He was like a sleeper cell, and then he finally comes back and he's the Booty Man now, but that just seems very contrived. Anyway, the stipulation for this match is if DDP wins, he gets to take Kimberly back and therefore, theoretically, all the money that she has. But if he loses, he quits wrestling, and that's a very unique stipulation for a heel to have to work with. How often do you see someone have to fight for their job or for the girl or for both and not be the babyface in this situation? It's very weird. This match feels a lot longer than it actually is. It's like 16 minutes long, but it is a long 16 minutes. You could easily have cut this match in half or just to 10 minutes or something, and I think it would have been a much more succinct match. This match was boring. The fans did not care about anything because DDP has spent every other minute like jaw-jacking with the fans, but they just did not react to what was going on in this matchup. Later in the match, Kimberly, the Booty Babe, that's her name now, joins the action at ringside.
Oh, here he comes! I tell you.
I want him to be my boyfriend.
Kim gets on the apron to confront DDP. He plants a big kiss on her, and she responds with this massive slap, and it's right in front of the referee, and there's no DQ. If you're standing for disqualification in this show, as from earlier, the Regal Finlay match, and the Blue Bloods come down to ringside and beat up Finlay, then the slap, technically, should count as disqualification, even though it's uncensored, and there's supposed to be no DQs, but there was a DQ earlier, and this one's not a DQ. My brain's hurting. Anyway, Booty Man hits the high knee, get it? High knee, waka waka, to win the match, and there you go. DDP loses the match. He quits wrestling for such a very, very long time, all of 2 months, because he's back by Slamboree that year. So what the hell is that stipulation got to do with anything? That was not a very great match. I'm going to give it 1 star out of 4. It lost steam very quickly, went on a little bit too long, and the crowd just didn't care. Up next, Giant versus Giant, as The Giant with Jimmy Hart takes on Lochness, formerly of the Dungeon of Doom. Of course, Lochness is better known as Giant Haystacks, a very famous English wrestler who made his name in the 70s and 80s, known for being very tall and very fat. He was billed at just under 700 pounds in his career. He debuted for WCW as a member of the Dungeon of Doom in '95, but was very recently kicked out of the group by Jimmy Hart, hence the grudge in this match. I believe it was Jimmy Hart using his power of attorney to push Lochness out of the group. The winner of this match will face Flair for the World Championship the next night on Nitro, so very high stakes going in this matchup, which really there isn't much to it. Nessie gets some offense early on, but Giant cuts him off. There's a big boot, a leg drop, and a pinfall. No, it's not a Hulk Hogan match, but Giant certainly was friends with Hogan at this time. So the Giant wins here, a very short match. In this case, probably a good thing. I don't know how long Lochness could have gone for against the Giant with these two guys who, at the time with the Giant, with his lack of experience in wrestling, probably not much of a ring general general either, so it's probably a very limited matchup. I'm going to give this one 1 star out of 4. And in case you're curious, by the way, the title match between Flair and the Giant on Nitro ended in a no contest. In our semi-main event, a Chicago street fight miles away from Chicago as the Road Warriors take on Sting and Booker T. This was very confusing to me. It took me a long time to figure out the story of what was going on here, because this isn't the year 2000 when Booker T is a singles guy and a team between those two could have made sense. No, this is when Booker T is still firmly entrenched in Harlem Heat, teaming with his brother Stevie Ray. Here's what happened. Back in February, the Road Warriors beat Harlem Heat to become the #1 contenders for the tag titles, which were held by Sting and Lex Luger. Luger challenges the Road Warriors to a Chicago street fight for Uncensored, because Luger is also from Chicago, as are the Road Warriors. But then Jimmy Hart uses his power of attorney, there's that phrase again, because he managed Lex Luger in Dungeon of Doom. So now he's pulling Lex Luger out of that match to put him in the main event, which I'll get to in a bit. So now Luger is out, Sting doesn't have a partner. Booker T steps in because he wants to do a favor for Sting and say, hey, if I help you beat the Road Warriors, then you give Harlem Heat a shot at those tag titles. So that's how this whole thing came about. It's just a big brawl. I mean, it's like Chicago street fight. There's big brawling here. Chairs, cables, even brooms, all used with a plum from both sides. Really good use of split screen here, because you've got like all action on very far parts of the arena. So you've got like a split screen showing what's going on, like between one set of guys and a split screen between another 2 set of guys. Everyone's exploring the space in this matchup. They're going up and down the ramp repeatedly. At one point, they're using the side of the Doomsday cage as a weapon on each other, throwing each other into the side of that cage wall. There's a great moment here when Booker misses an elbow drop onto Hawk, and then he starts to get up right away with a spin-a-rooney, but he stops when Animal kind of falls into him, and Hawk goes for a fist drop and he whiffs it. Hawk loves doing drop kicks on the outside for some reason. That's the last place I want to do a drop kick, if I could even do them. But here Hawk does at least 2 of them in this matchup. One on the straight concrete on the rampway, and then on the padding on the outside. Slightly better of a landing, I would imagine, but still, why would you do a drop kick on the outside? You're just like throwing your body away too in that one. Bobby, and I really noticed it in this match in particular, he does it like from here throughout the whole rest of the show very heavily, probably earlier in the match, early in the show as well. But he loves every time like a weapon is used or something illegal happens, Bobby just goes, "This is uncensored." He says that a lot.
It's uncensored. It's uncensored. They can do whatever they want. It's uncensored. You can do anything. It's a street fight.
At one point, Booker T just goes up and leaves. He throws his hands up. He walks to the back. Animals pursuing him. We cut to backstage where they're fighting. Lex Luger is nearby getting ready for his match in front of the mirror, is completely oblivious to what's going on around him. He's just checking his shit out while these 2 guys are just fighting in a match where he has some kind of personal investment in, because his partner is also involved in this match, by the way. Animal shoves Luger into a pile of trash just sitting there for some reason. Luger gets up and is just enraged. "Look at me, Jimmy! Look at me!" And he just flips out and starts beating up Animal alongside Booker T. Jimmy Hart just zips from one side of the shot to the other, like, pew! He comes back when Animal gets knocked out by getting run into a pole, and they tie Animal's hands to that pole, so he is indisposed for the rest of the matchup here. Booker T comes back to the ring, misses the Harlem Hangover. Stevie Ray decks Hawk from behind with a chair while the referee doesn't see it. Booker wins the match for his team. We get one last shot of Stevie Ray just walloping an unconscious Animal with the chair backstage. Just one last FU in there. That part to me was just hilarious. Like, why are you keeping to beat him up? That was just so unnecessary. I'm going to give this one 2 stars out of 4. It's a big, nasty brawl. Nothing crazy happening in this match except for the ending. The ending was bonkers. You know, there were still some good moments throughout the match, but the ending was just so off the rails with Luger going, "Look at me, Jimmy! Look at me!" It's now time for the main event of the evening, a Doomsday cage match pitting Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage against the Alliance to End Hulkamania, who are as follows: WCW Champion Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Kevin Sullivan, Lex Luger, who is forced into the match by his manager Jimmy Hart, Meng, who is billed from some unknown part of the planet. That's one of the best places to be billed from, I think. Barbarian, the Z Gangsta. They've dusted off Zeus from No Holds Barred, and he put him in this match here. He's probably just as limited in the ring now as he was then. And the Ultimate Solution, who's this big bodybuilder dude named Robert Swenson, and he was actually originally called the Final Solution until they realized, oh shoot, that's actually what Hitler called his plan to exterminate the Jews. Whoopsie! Let's just call him the Ultimate Solution now. So they all come actually conspicuous by their absence in the introductions are Z Gangsta and Ultimate Solution. I think there's a reason for this, and I'll get to it in a little bit. So first off, the rules of this match are Hogan and Savage start at the very top of this multi-level cage structure thing. They make their way through each room, fighting a bunch of people in every room, and they work their way down to the bottom. I thought the object was to leave the cage and have your feet hit the floor, but apparently that's not what happens. I don't know if that was by design or not. We'll get to that in a little bit. Room number 1 is Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. Good way to start this thing up, but it's very top-heavy kind of start to this match because it's never going to get better from here. Anderson's wearing sweats. He looks like your dad on the weekend. Heenan says on commentary, a very interesting line. He says, what a great thing for television, which is very true. It looks great if you're watching from home, if you're watching from what the camera's point of view is. If you're a fan watching this, I can't imagine it's very interesting because there's a lot of mesh and big lights happening. I would imagine if you're like on the cheap seats looking way off on the far end of this arena, you have no idea what the hell's happening in this matchup here. Not to mention the action isn't very exciting to begin with because due to the constraints of where they're fighting and what they're fighting on, they can't do a whole lot of actual wrestling in this match. It's just all punches and kicks and chokes, and that's about it. Hogan and Savage somehow produce powder. They throw it in the eyes of Flair and Arn. That gives them enough time to make their way through the trapdoor and down to the next level, which is Kevin Sullivan, Luger, Meng, and Sullivan. So it goes from a 2-on-2 matchup to a 4-on-2 matchup. Hogan does soon close a door to keep the Faces of Fear from getting to them. It does even the odds for a bit. He bars them out from this other side. Why you would design that way, I have no idea, other than for the purpose of blocking them out at some point in the match. Sullivan and Hogan start fighting on the scaffolding on the side of the structure, like they're like, Sullivan's like hanging off the edge, like he's gonna fall off or something, and they make their way down. And so Savage is fighting Luger. Hogan and Sullivan make their way to the floor and fight, and Luger and Savage follow them out, and then they make their way to the ring and fight. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought this was you win the match by leaving the cage or something. I didn't realize there's actually fighting on the floor and in the ring and stuff. I was very confused by this. It basically turns into a match not unlike the Chicago street fight we just saw. Suddenly, the Ultimate Solution and Z Gangsta make their way to the ring. Gee, I wonder if they were held off to try and preserve them because they're so limited in the ring they couldn't do much other than like big punches and blows, which is all they fucking did in this matchup as well. All that Tom Lister, Tiny Lister, Z Gangsta, Zeus, whatever you want to call him, all he does in this match is just the boom, boom, the thing that he did in No Holds Barred from like 10 years prior, and he's still doing the same thing. Hasn't learned I mean, he's under no obligation to learn a damn thing from that point, but like, why would you bring him back here? It's just like they're just throwing everyone onto this match, just this big old goulash. Let's make this work. Let's make this happen. Hogan's got to be the Dragon Slayer. Somehow Hogan and Savage dispose of Luger and Sullivan, and they make their way back to the Doomsday cage with Ultimate Solution and Z Gangsta. Why in the hell are these two immobile, untalented schlubs the final two guys in this match? Wouldn't you swap the thing and have Ultimate Solution and Z Gangsta be the first guys Hogan and Savage fight and then end with Flair and Anderson or Luger and Sullivan or some combination therein? That'd be so much better than what they wound up doing, having like these two schlubs they're fighting, these two big brick shithouses they're just fighting here, and it looks so awful. Flair and Arn do rejoin the action. Arn took his sweats off, so he's in his gear now. He looks respectable. It's 4-on-2 again. The Booty Man sneaks into the cage and sneaks in some powder and frying pans to Hogan and Savage. Frying pans. Frying pans. Out of all the possible weapons you could choose from in this wild, fantastical show and this fantastical match, you go with frying pans. Got it. Hogan and Savage just wail the shit out of their opponents with frying pans. Hogan breaks his, I believe, and they'll be frying pans. Where are the rolling pins and the banana cream pies and the anvils and the boulders on lever systems? Luger gets in the ring, puts on a loaded glove, this like shiny black glove thing. I thought it was a reference to the OJ case, but it's just like a loaded glove. And really, if you had a loaded glove on, you punch someone with it, wouldn't that also break your hand? That's neither here nor there. The point is, Flair's holding Savage up for Luger to punch him. Luger goes for the punch. Savage ducks. Luger does the most blatant punch pulling ever, then goes ahead and punches Flair. Instead of one fluid movement where he just decks Flair, he just blatantly stops and then realizes what he's doing, punches Flair. That was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And here's the thing, it's such this huge botch, and you could have played off it in a number of ways. Since Luger didn't want to be there anyway, you could have had this moment where he says afterward, I had a change of heart and I wanted to punch him anyway. Something, anything to explain away how terrible that botch was. But no, they basically blamed their inevitable loss in this match on Lex Luger, who hit Flair by accident. So by writing it off as an accident, it looks like a really shitty accident. Hogan and Savage begin to make their way out of the cage, and they remember, oh shit, one of us has got to pin somebody. So Savage turns around, dives halfway across the ring onto Ric Flair to get the pinfall. He pins him, then he scrambles out of the cage. Hogan and Savage win the day. They defeat the Alliance to end Hulkamania. What a clusterfuck of a finish that was to what was already a bad match, and that finish just made it even worse. Hogan and Savage defeat 8 dudes basically single-handedly if you don't count the Booty Man's involvement. They just do it all by themselves. Here's the crazy thing. Kevin Sullivan said in an interview with Kayfabe Commentaries, it was originally supposed to be just like Hogan and Savage versus Sullivan and the Giant. Now, granted, that match I think has been done before. But Hogan's like, no, brother, we gotta get this guy and this guy and this guy. They really want to stack the deck against Hogan and Savage here, so Hogan could finally like be the Dragon Slayer, like I said. And you know, like it certainly got the point across. Hogan can beat anybody and everybody. And Sullivan said in an interview, basically he went along with it because he wanted to try and like use that leverage later on to convince Hogan, hey, maybe you can trust me now because I did this thing for you, it made you look good. Now we can work together a little more. And that actually wound up happening. So Sullivan accomplished what he wanted to as a booker, and Hogan got what he wanted out of it to be the ultimate God King and beating everybody in sight. Also, a side note here, the Ultimate Solution, Robert Swenson, didn't do very much before and after this moment here, this match at Uncensored 96. He unfortunately passed away due to heart failure 1 year later at the age of 40. And the thing I read about his funeral was, in his funeral, they measured his biceps one last time before cremating him. Take that for what you will. Oh yeah, I forgot I have to give a match rating here. I'm going to give this one a half star out of 4. I don't give 0 stars as a rule. A half star is the lowest I can go. If I could go to 0 stars, I would, because it was truly worse than a half star. Jesus, what a bad match. Oddly enough, very interesting premise. I could see you doing something very cool with this. Maybe some kind of tag team gauntlet thing, where it's just a tag team in each room and you fight for a bit. Kind of like a predecessor to like the Elimination Chamber or some kind of other weird variation of War Games. Something like that. But this was just way too much. Like this clear, like, hey, let's have Hogan and Savage defy all the odds. God, John Cena would blush at how this was booked. This is ridiculous. It just totally goes off the rails almost immediately. As soon as they leave the Flair Anderson room, things go absolutely wacky, and it has one of the most poorly done, poorly executed finishes I've ever seen. Yeah, this match, it's as bad as everyone says it is, for many, many reasons. For Hogan's ego, for the execution, for the botches, and for the people involved. Not taking away from guys like Luger and Sullivan and Flair and Anderson. Those guys are fine, and Megan Barbarian too. But why the hell have Z Gangsta and Ultimate Solution there? Two just immobile guys who don't do anything. One of whom's not even really a worker, and the other one's barely such, and you have them in this match. It boggles my mind that Hogan was able to get away with this in WCW. My final grade for WCW Uncensored 96 is a D+. And honestly, that's the best grade I can give for this show. Even though you've got Guerrero and Konnan, which is a great match, Regal and Finlay, which was an awesome match. Go out of your way to see that one ASAP. And the commentary is a guilty pleasure of mine in this show. Everything else is just from, man, there's the Giant and Lochness. What a nothing match. Madusa versus Parker, had some funny moments. I think just Dusty popping over the lockup to me was the best part of it. And then DDP versus Booty Man, that could have been cut in half, would have been a much better match. And the Doomsday Cage match, for all the reasons I just said moments ago. Yeah, there's a reason this show, I should say, is considered such a terrible show. There are some hidden gems in this that make the first third of it worth watching, but everything after that you're better off just tuning out or doing something else that's far more constructive, like hammering your penis with a big mallet or something, because that is just, that's what I would rather do than watch that Doomsday Cage match again. That's my take on it. Well, thanks once again to Kevin, Brian, and Peter for nominating this show for me to review. If you've got a classic show for me to review, be it good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the ability to nominate shows for me to review in future installments of this segment. Next time on the classic review, I'm actually going to be bumping it up a little bit, because next week there will be no Who Wore Better. So to fill that gap, I'm going to be doing a very special review of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre from 1999. And I know that, it's going to be 1 week after Valentine's Day, so it'll be much more appropriate the previous week, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.